Can you hear me? This is Rich Lonsdale. Can you hear me?
There we go. Can you hear us?
Yes, again.
Okay, great.
What are you saying?
Open the meeting for March the 20th for the Planning Commission, Yale Planning Commission. And do we need to have a roll call, please, staff?
Commissioner Carlos Perez,
Here.
Commissioner Bob Howard,
Here.
Commissioner John Graber,
Here.
Commissioner Richard Lonsdale,
Here.
Commissioner Ann Mormont, here, Commissioner John Thompson,
Here.
and then Commissioner Jerry Fugic is excused.
Very well. I'd like now for us to please stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, then, has everyone had an opportunity to read the minutes? Then I need to have a motion to approve the minutes.
I'd move that we approve the minutes.
I second.
Well, it has been approved, it's seconded. The next item on our agenda is to ask whether or not the staff has any communications.
We
Do you have
did,
any communications?
You need to take a vote on after the second.
I'm saying again,
You need to vote. Approval of the minutes.
so did we not do that? No, I didn't. Okay. Need to vote approval on the, okay, on the minutes I see. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. None. Motion has been approved. For the minutes from January the 17th. Now we go to staff communications.
I'm Gary Cooper, the planning and building manager. I'll make a few comments. I don't know if Cody will have anything to add. We're working on several different fronts. So the habitat conservation plan, which I know you've been made aware of in previous meetings, is marching along. The first chapter of the HCP has been submitted to this Fish and Wildlife Service. It's a fairly routine kind of a, like they call a table setting chapter. There's nothing really in there too much to be worried about. It kind of just really describes what an HCP is, a little bit about general features of the city of Yelm, what we're planning to do in the subsequent chapters, but at least we're getting some traction and moving on that. We plan to have a stakeholders meeting on the HCP April 18th, I believe it is, April 18th. And by then we hope to have the next chapter done, chapter 2. So as those things roll out, we'll be making you aware of them. The housing action plan, another big effort that is underway. We are due to receive a draft of the housing action plan by the end of this month. Our grant requires us to have the thing completely done and adopted by June 30th. And if it isn't, whatever funds are still hanging out there, we won't receive. So there's a hard deadline on that, and the consultant is aware of it. So they were supposed to have been here. We were going to schedule them to come and give you a briefing, but just due to some illness on one of the staff people who's been working on it, we're gonna have to delay that until next month. We sent out requests for proposals for consultant to do our 2025 comprehensive plan update. That went out on Friday. That's a $225,000 project. 100 of it would be provided by the city, and $125,000 grant from Department of Commerce. That's a big effort. It's going to be taking into account the parks plan update, habitat conservation plan, housing action plan. All of those things will be related to it. So this will be the sort of the overarching plan that sort of ties all those things together, and also our development codes. So that's the second piece. We also sent out we call it an RFP request for proposals on Friday for a development code update. We've got a lot of things in our code that are outdated or missing in some cases. So this is for $100,000 contract. That's not going to be enough to do everything the city needs to do, but it's going to be a good start to update some things that we really need to address. That's all I have, Cody.
That's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Councilmember Crossman.
There's a couple of things that affect council that we voted on as well. The HCP, the first one, stakeholders meeting, you mentioned who are the stakeholders, and that would be on
I
that.
don't have the list in front of me, and I wasn't at the very first one, but Miriam, okay.
Or you can, because you made the list, but I was at the first stakeholders.
And send it to you after the meeting.
Okay, yeah, be great. Then 2, the HCP contract, if they don't get it done by the time that grant runs out, is there recourse in our contract?
HAP, the
Yeah.
Housing Action Plan.
Yes,
The housing action plan. If they don't get it done, what?
in time, is
Any,
there a recourse?
well, I mean, we will be able to keep any funds that we've received from the grant for the deliverables that have been completed, but we won't get reimbursed for example, let's say there's a task in there about basically taking it through planning commission and council that the consultant will bill us for as part of the, doing the presentations and all that. If the time runs out and we haven't gotten to the point of taking it to planning commission and council, we won't receive any reimbursement from Commerce for that part of the grant. We think that if we're gonna lose any of the grant, which is it's a $75,000 grant. There's a possibility if they don't get it done that we might lose 15,000, which would be that piece, taking it through planning commission and council. So it is definitely on a tight timeline, and there's other processes we have to do, State Environmental Policy Act and other things that are, they know they've got to get it done.
I know, but yeah, you saying they know and they get it, but is there any recourse like?
Oh, to the
If the consultant doesn't get it done in time.
I think the main recourse for them would be, we have an RFP out for a comp plan, and we have an RFP out for development code updates, and we're gonna. One of the things we're gonna look to when we choose a consultant is, do you get your stuff done on time? So I mean, that's a big leverage, but it would be probably based more on what's the likelihood of getting a future project with us if you didn't finish the last one on time.
I'm curious as to how much involvement the planning commission will have with, and coordination with this, the consultant.
Oh, with the consultant? Well, I know that they have been here once. And they were supposed to be here at this meeting to give you an update, but due to an illness of one of their staff members, you won't be hearing from them until your next meeting. But they are, part of what they're under contract for is to keep the planning commission up to speed on what they're working on.
All right, any other communications?
I have a question.
Yes,
If, in the discussion, looking at where are the pinch points of trying to complete all the work within the confines of the grant, were that coming before the planning commission with the final, or getting approval for the final draft of the housing action plan, and then taking it to council? We have in the past sometimes used a work session to accomplish a lot of detailed review and approval and coming through large deliverables like that. We might want to consider if that's a way to go about this one, so that we can.
That might be, I mean, now that they are due to have the draft done by the end of this month, that might be a good approach. I mean, this particular meeting, we were hoping that they would be here to just discuss with you the various kinds of, because we have to develop strategies basically for getting not just affordable, but very affordable housing in some categories built in Yelm. And some of those strategies, some are more controversial than others, and so I wanted them to present the strategies that we will be considering, just to sort of get a, do a taste test to see,
That's what I'm saying, go and use the next meeting to get that overview of the draft, but then have a work session that we then come up with what are our. I mean, we've done that in the past in ways that we have to mull around and go through a lot of stuff.
Are you envisioning one that would happen on the regular planning commission schedule or a special meeting?
Special meeting.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
It's just an idea to keep us from getting into this.
Yeah.
In terms of timing.
Yeah, I think when you talk about pinch points, my main concern about getting things done on time is if there are a whole, a big list of different approaches and there's not agreement on which ones we should adopt, then we could get bogged down.
true.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Would you happen to know, I may be off key, I apologize, first meeting, but on the housing thing, would you happen to know if the contractors are working with the South Sound Military Communities Partnership on developing this plan?
I do not know off the top of my head if they are. That might be something you want to email me and I can, I will forward it to our consultant to see whether they've roped them in. So that might be, for example, a group that we would want to put on an expanded stakeholders list.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any more comments or staff communications, I'm sorry? None? Then let's go on to public comments. Is there anyone here that would like to make some comments to the commission? Other than what you already have? None? It's all right. All right, we'll go on to unfinished business. Staff, are there any unfinished business from the last meeting that we need to go over?
No.
No. Very well. We'll move on to item number 8, new business. Please report, staff, on any new business. What's all to be listed on the agenda? Any new business?
Yes, yes. So I have a presentation that just sort of informational presentation to discuss the Tahoma Terra
Yes.
master plan community. No decisions to be made. It's just, you drive by that all the time, and it's one of the most, developing areas in the city. So I thought you might be interested to know. And we've been having discussions with Southtown builders on what would basically be the last piece of the build out of that community. So I want to kind of give you some history and then just kind of move to where we are now and what we're considering for the final phase of it.
Okay.
So if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. That yellow area is a zoning district that's called master plan community, and it's that's not the actual master plan community because the zoning district is way bigger than the actual Tahoma Terra, but it is the largest zoning district in the city. And the intent of that district is to provide for very large scale projects. I believe you have to have the project has to have a minimum of 220 acres. And its intent is to create kind of a self-contained community that provides a full range of housing types. And if you drive through there, you'll see that there is a range of housing types, single family, open space, commercial, parks and recreation. Sorry, here the housing types are. So again, to provide a range of single family homes, apartments, townhomes, row houses, and the top right there, those are row houses. Technically, we don't have row houses in there. We have something called like alley delimited, but they look almost like row houses. They're just not attached. So this goes back a long ways. This thing has been developing for a long time. It really got slowed down in 2008 when we had the housing or the lending crisis, the recession and all that, and it kind of went dormant for a while. It was approved by the city council in 2005, 220 acre development. The area east of Thompson Creek is 55 acres. And has already been developed with 220 single family residential lots and 46 apartment units south of Longmire. And then the area between Thompson Creek and Tahoma Boulevard is sort of supposed to be the commercial center for the area. And it was envisioned that there would be 5 commercial, well, they said commercial lots, so commercial buildings. That has not yet been completed. I know that there have been lots of questions over the years as to why. So far, sort of west of Thompson Creek and north of Tahoma, the 388 total units have been approved. Those are single family units. 250 of those have been constructed, so there are still 136 under construction. Which if you've driven back there, you can see that there's still a lot of work going on in that particular part of the MPC. South of the Tahoma Boulevard, the last phases of the MPC are underway. another 234 single-family residences have been approved. And then in that little yellow box are 4 apartment buildings that total 48 units. This is kind of the overall view of what was envisioned. So you can see that basically north and east of Tahoma Terra, or north and east, I should say, pretty much single family units. You can see in the blue where that undeveloped commercial piece is. Open space is basically Thompson Creek and whatever buffers apply to that. And then in the southwest, it was envisioned there would be 252 single family units. And the purple and the brown were supposed to be all apartments.
If, I'm sorry to interrupt, if I can point out on that southwest of Tahoma where you said it was 252 single family, I believe that should be 234.
Okay, I'll double check that.
Yeah, because the 252 was part of the 388 that's north of Tahoma, and it's actually 234, which you just mentioned on the previous slide.
Okay, I'll make note of that. Thank you. So, you know, a development that occurs over a period of 17, 18 years is almost always going to veer off a little bit from what was originally intended for a variety of reasons. A lot of times it's just changes in the economy. And in 2008, there was a pretty big change. But it has always been very important to the city as part of this, that this MPC have a commercial aspect to it. And I guess for some people, that's sort of one sore point that still has not happened. The MPC has, I guess, met the letter of the law in terms of the amended motion for the approval of the MPC, but I just put in bold that the only thing that the council recommended amending to the hearings examiner's conditions were that the neighborhood commercial center shall be approved and ready for the construction of commercial buildings as opposed to should be. And they were just trying to put an exclamation point on the fact that that was important to them. It's kind of met the letter of the law in that it has been improved and is ready for the construction, but no construction has occurred. So. One of the areas that did not happen, and I had a chance actually to ask South Sound builders about this the other day, but if you see the brown area there, that was supposed to be a higher density multifamily development area. But the actual development and build out there, oh, it's been approved for, it hasn't been built out, has been single family. So north of it in the purple, there are apartment buildings, but that little southern piece is single family and not apartments. And asking South Sound builders about that, they just felt at the time, they don't feel that way now, but at the time, they didn't feel that they could basically sell the apartments. I mean, that it wouldn't be a feasible project economically. Things have changed, they don't feel that way now. So this is anyway, this is sort of, hey, what was approved to be built and what actually has been either approved by us to be constructed or has been constructed. And there's a range of numbers for all the housing types that the developer, could have built. And so for the single family residential, to be in compliance with their approval, they could have built a minimum of 484 or a maximum of 726. They ended up building 842. And that was based on, again, on approvals after the fact. I'm pretty sure those went to the hearing examiner. I mean, those amendments, those modifications. The multifamily, they needed a minimum of 178, and so far they've only got 96. Townhomes, that's in flux. They're, right now, they're 10 short. But I'll talk a little bit about what we've been discussing with them for the last phase. And of course, with the commercial, they're 0 for 5 on that. So, yeah, it's definitely different than envisioned. I mean, it's especially with the future proposal, I think it'll be pretty much well within the range, although they will have exceeded on the single family. So again, I'm just trying to emphasize that the hearing examiner also, you could tell, envisioned that the commercial buildings would be, or the commercial aspect of the proposal would take place fairly soon in the development of the NPC. So the, you know, again, I think it would have been nice to say constructed, but phase 2 will provide lots for 5 commercial buildings and open space park areas associated with Thompson Creek.
How many acres is the total master plan?
Just this master plan or the whole?
The total piece there that was originally awarded as a master plan community. This is 220
I think it's
acres.
about 1,200 acres.
1,200.
1,200,
Yeah.
I think is what it is.
Yeah.
Because I think back, because I was on the planning commission back there, originally there was a company that was going to do the entire project.
Right.
And that included even putting in an elementary school, putting in all the roads and everything else. Then they went bankrupt.
Right.
And it kind of sat for a while. And then my understanding was then basically the city looked and someone came in and said, well, we do a piece of this, but we can't possibly do the whole thing. And so the only reason I bring that question up is in the original plan, there were some commitments as a planning community that was required. One of them was that there was a big concern of the school district. They came into the planning commission and cited if you're building 1,600 acres, and I don't know what it was going to be, about 4,000 or 3,000, it would be a large population, that there was an agreement that they would be granted acreage. I don't know what it would be, 20 acres or whatever it was. You look at piecemealing it, there's a potential that some of that could fall through because the planning commission looked at it and bought it in as the whole package. But now you've got a partial package where you have a little industry going, little things going on. And I'm assuming if another person comes in and says, well, I'll do another 500 acres, that would be another approach. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering how we track it so we make sure it all develops into a full community when we're doing it piecemeal. You may not have an answer, but it's just a question.
Well, I mean, some of the things you mentioned, like, you know, basically just even like the expected local population, whatever comes in next, we would take into account what's been developed there now to look at what school needs would be, you know, offsite traffic, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's one thing. I understand what you're saying about, especially when you get different builders coming in over time and not one, you know, one centralized planning approach. There has been interest expressed in trying to revive that master plan for the rest of the MPC, but it hasn't gone anywhere yet. And now the city owns 640 acres of it, so. Which we're holding on to because we don't know what's the habitat conservation plan or the housing action plan, you know, will provide in terms of direction on how to use that land.
Kind of follow up on what John was saying, what oversight was taken to allow the deviation from the master plan? Was it go through the hearing examiner or what?
Yes,
That,
that's why, and in fact, what's really odd about the whole approval of the master plan community is that the approval process is from the hearing examiner to the council. But we're supposed to provide periodic updates to the planning commission.
I don't remember getting any updates on it.
Yeah, I think those fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, a 2005 hearing examiner decision and so many different people have passed through that they probably never knew that condition was in.
And there are no penalties because the hearing examiner has approved the changes, so.
That's right, has. And I think in every case, the argument has been for economic reasons to approve it. In other words, if we can't do whatever we're proposing, we won't be able to do anything at all.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how you hold heat to the fire on the commercial area when that was originally agreed to by Welcome or whoever had it at that time. And then you go back and go, well, you're gonna build this area here, so we want you to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing, that. You know, putting a condition in there that said. You can't do anything beyond a certain area of this master plan community until we have our commercial would have been I mean, it's the way it was supposed to work. But I think probably, you know, again, I'm just guessing. But I think like the 2008 recession and, you know, I think it rattled everybody to probably loosen up a little bit to just make sure that at least something could get built.
Well, it's still difficult to bring in commercial.
Yeah.
Within, I mean, there was a long time that across from the post office, that I sat waiting for commercial on a mixed use area
Yeah.
and it's just gonna be difficult. There's not a demand.
See, I mean, Cody says he gets called all the time for people looking for business to commercial space, but maybe it's location type stuff. So, you know, and anyway, so I was just gonna say, you know, we have had various proposals for developing the commercial area. Up until recently, we've been going back and forth on this. You know, we've been told all the commercial won't pencil out, but finally, we did get something from Sound Built Homes. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about that. And we just got this last week. We've been going back and forth with Sound Built because their original proposal was to just do a mini storage and a couple commercial spaces. And the mini storage technically would not even meet setbacks because you're supposed to be 500 feet off of neighborhood arterial. Yeah. They can get one with a variance if we support it, but we said we wouldn't be willing to support that we really wanted to get those 5 commercial spaces. And so we've gone back and forth and they have come up with something that we think we can support. There would be 2 leased office, like professional office spaces. So, you know, like for a dentist's office or who knows, any, you know, professional services of various kinds. They're proposing something along, I mean, they kept mentioning Dutch Brothers as their example of like a coffee place. They originally proposed a drive-through, but we kind of insisted that they propose a building that if the coffee shop left could be used for other things. And so this would be a drive-through with indoor seating. So it could be, you know, a multi-use, at least over time situation. And then the 2 retail spaces are, it could be a restaurant. They're going to be, you know, decent sized spaces that they kind of think of them in terms of restaurant type spaces. So we feel like we can support that as a recommendation. And the other thing is they're making up for some of that multifamily that we didn't get because we're also supporting allowing these apartment complexes in there, which weren't originally envisioned. And those will be 12 unit apartment buildings. So that's 90, what is it, 108? What is it? 108. There we go. Yes. So we'd be getting 108 more apartments, which would get us above that minimum threshold that we were looking at trying to get for the master plan community. And the other thing, they've provided us with visual renderings of these buildings. And I don't know if you've looked, but the apartments that have been built out there are actually really quite attractive, the ones that are already up. And they show apartments that are sort of that same quality, and they will be completely shielding or buffering visually the mini storage. So you won't be seeing that when you drive down Tahoma Boulevard. And then in between, you can see a little bit of recreational, like basketball court, et cetera. So that's their latest proposal. They asked today what would be the next steps of moving forward with it. I replied that Cody and I need to talk about how to secure guarantees that the commercial is going to happen. And we may, I'm not exactly sure how to do that at the moment.
a comment that I have, but from what I remember way back when, our vision for Young was somewhat of a walkabout town. Now, I know this is back over there and that's a different area. But you're not gonna get it with storage units, you're not gonna get that kind of activity with storage units and office spaces. But again, as you're saying, there's economics involved here. If they don't feel that they can support retail spaces, then they're not gonna build them, right? They're not gonna wanna do. So what the proposal that I see here is that there's gonna be two more or less, well, just three retail spaces, right? The coffee thing and two retail things here, and the rest is storage buildings, is that?
Well, there's two leased office spaces too. So, I mean, the hearing examiner decision said commercial use and it didn't mean, I mean, of course, when we talk about it, we're like, wow, it'd be great to have a little ice cream store that you can walk to and.
Yeah, I like that idea.
There may be in those retail spaces actually room for more than one use as well.
Yeah.
But I would also say that the storage units are in addition to the minimum 5 commercial spaces that are required. So they're still meeting the 5.
Okay,
And again, I wish Cody were in here. He lives over there. He thinks there's demand for the storage as well.
I'd like to interject if I could, please.
Sure.
Hey, I know you're talking about the commercial and problem of getting some of the commercial in there with what I figured out about the looking at the average number of people per houses and the apartments and everything, that roughly the Tahoma master plan would create roughly 2,852 additional residents, which would increase the population by about 27%. From what I was looking at is that there's basically not really any type of grocery outlet on the south end of town. And just doing a little bit of research, that I noticed that Walmart actually did some stores on college campuses that had a 3,300 square foot footprint. And they actually did deliveries to dorms, and also this would also have a pharmacy in it. And they could do door-to-door, pharmacy delivery, grocery delivery. So that could potentially be an idea if the master planned area is supposed to be self-contained. If it could have a, some type of small grocery outlet, convenience type store, maybe a small gas station. I realize gas stations are a dime a dozen, within town here, but maybe looking at the small Walmart, campus type thing that would fit within, one of those retail, commercial spaces, but, provide the residents somewhere that they can go within their community to get, groceries or immediate needs versus having to, go through the traffic and everything to get down to Safeway or Walmart.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I don't think that we would make it a condition of approval. I don't think we would want to mandate the exact type of retail use that should go in there. Olympia's got a couple of very small, it's called Spud's Grocery, and it's, it's the size of, I would say it's maybe a 20 by 40 type space with a small market, and it's a really nice amenity to the neighborhood. It'd be great if something like that would move in there, but I wouldn't want to make the final phase approval conditional on that.
No, but I mean, just offering it as a thought, and if somebody could, I'm not sure who the powers that be to, if it's up to South Sound to determine, who goes in there, if it's up to the city council or the planning commission on what type of retail space that goes in there. But I mean, even if the city potentially gave, a discount or something, in order for, that type of facility to move in, I mean, just throwing out my 2 cents.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's definitely a good idea if there were a little market or something like that in there.
Yeah, I think one of the things, obviously, if you look at long term, the idea was that Tacoma Boulevard would go all the way through. You'd end up down on 507. It would be a thorough road. If I'm doing a business right now on a dead end road and I put my coffee shop there, right now, people are reluctant to put business other on 510 or 507, the main drag, because that's where people are going to see me. In the future, when we see that go all the way through as a road where traffic would be bypassing, people would be coming up even from Rainier, could cut through there to head down, toward the casino.
Right.
Then you have the potential for an interest in having development of businesses. But even right now, you're looking to put a coffee shop where you're putting it there. How many of us drive down to Houma Boulevard every day or every month or ever?
Go to the high school.
Yeah.
Or you go
That would be about it. And so I think the future, though, I can see real positive once that is developed.
But and Cody would know better than myself, but we put so many living units in there, it is kind of its own community.
Yeah.
And it is a walkable community. And I know that you mentioned like walking to Forelli's and all these other things. So,
And
South Sound Homes it's been kind of difficult getting to this point because they have just said all along, they can't do the retail, but they know that they have to. It's part of, they basically bought the master plan community decision. And that was a commitment that they made in buying it. So we're definitely going to make sure at least something
there, yeah.
Something, yes.
Are they required to just have a building pad that's ready to go? Or are they required to actually have a building that's ready to be leased?
They have to build it. Yes.
And that's part of all the preview that you showed us. That's a big demand.
So we just have to figure out the timing of it. I mean, maybe link it to getting any permits for the storage units or something like that. We have to figure out a way to do that. I don't exactly know yet.
From the builder's perspective, I'd like to know what they're facing. I mean, right now, credit's gonna be tight, it's gonna be even more tight. Time, this is anybody's read the news, what's going on.
They seem pretty gung ho on building apartments right now, though. I mean, seriously,
There's a big demand.
yeah, so.
We were asked here not too long ago, there's gonna be a session coming up where we gotta look at this low income housing situation. Is this an area where that would apply?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, so that's another thing that we are involved with right now. The state is requiring, basically any cities that are subject to the Growth Management Act to come up with a plan to provide, low income, very low income and extremely low income housing. And just as an example of that, low income is like a household, any household that makes 70% or less of the area's average family income. Very low is 50% of the average income, and extremely low is 30% of the average income. So that's, if your average income is, I'm gonna make it high just so that I can use round numbers and not screw up my math. But if it's 100,000, then an extremely low income family is 30,000. And you have to figure out a way to find housing for people who only have a $30,000 a year income, which it's going to be really difficult to do. And what's going to happen is Commerce is going to, they're doing housing studies, and every county in that plans under the growth management will be given a number. You need to provide, 100 low income, 80, I'm just making this up, very low, and 80 extremely low. And then the county is going to allocate that to the cities through a process. So Yelm at some point will be given this state mandated number that says that we need to figure out a way to provide all levels of housing. That's part of what our housing action plan is about. These apartments here, I can't imagine them being, they're probably not even gonna be low income.
Cause well, my knowledge is somewhat limited here, but it just seems to me, I build custom homes. That's what I do for a living, and I've been in the business for 45 years. So the bottom line is, low income is obviously that person only makes 30,000 a year, but yet can we go out and build some livable home and meet that expectation?
No, I know.
And that's, and with the cost of reality of how things are, I don't see. It's
gonna be-
You guys are even gonna be able to do that.
You could do it with townhouses possibly, but I don't know if you could do single dwelling units because of the price of property.
It is to do subsidized housing, like behind the Safeway was built. And where a lot of the building cost is not in, doesn't have to be returned. That is,
Yeah.
it's,
I think most communities right now are looking to organizations like Habitat for Humanity, like Olympia just sold a large site to Habitat for Humanity for $1. So they didn't have any ground costs. But you're right, it's really different. If a developer can make very profitable apartments, what's the incentive to build anything less? And so that's where the housing action plan is going to have a lot of strategies, you know, like multifamily tax exemptions, and those are controversial because a lot of people think, oh, you're giving it away to the developers. But a lot of times they won't build low income unless they can get like a 10-year tax exemption. Those kinds of things.
Well, then your focus for low income has to be fairly close to bus routes,
Yes.
walking routes to grocery stores and everything else. Because the low income probably doesn't have a vehicle possibly.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of limited of where you're going to focus that low income housing.
you're
So
right.
it's easy access. As you mentioned, it's an ideal spot right behind Safeway as an ideal location for low income development because it's close to Safeway and close to bus routes and things like that.
There was someone on the council, there was a fellow on the council years ago, whose focus was to bring in organizations that would make the low income housing available. And so there's got to be organizations out there that were doing this, you know, Habitat, but there's others as well, because they were able to get the apartments built behind Safeway. And so at least we've got a few.
So a lot of communities, including Olympia, have also, this is kind of happening all over the country, and it's also controversial, but trying to reduce the cost of building multifamily housing by reducing and in some cases completely eliminating off-street parking requirements. And that doesn't mean they don't get built, but they just let the market decide how many need to get built. The idea being to reduce the overall cost of development. And off-street parking for apartments, if it's they call it structured parking, if it's actually part of the building, can actually run anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 per space by the time you take into account providing all the lanes, et cetera, so you can save quite a bit of money. And that could be an incentive again for some people to develop that otherwise might not do low income. So it's a tough one.
These are some of the strategies that we will need to look at.
Yes.
to get the action plan.
Yes, these are the types of strategies.
Session.
Yeah,
It's a.
they're controversial strategies. But as far as this goes, that's all I have for you. I mean, that's what we're looking at. That proposal is not even a week old. But I let her in just to try to, you know, get the city's final approval.
Any further comments?
Is this something we wanted to do that study session on?
Is there what?
Is there a study session that we want to look at on some of this? Is that what you were talking about earlier?
Well, I'm saying that Some of the concepts that we're dealing with
Okay.
here are also what we're gonna be dealing with when we bring in a housing action plan. And figure out how are we going to address the low income.
Perhaps it's the end of this month, right? So anytime thereafter, I guess.
So will you look into the possibility of
A work session.
arranging a work study for us after the?
Yeah, so we're meeting with the consultant tomorrow to talk about where they are with the draft of the plan. I want to make sure that we've got enough to have a work session on, but for sure we'll have one.
Very well.
I think it's a good idea.
I'm gonna suggest that we get that overview first and then do a work session, so it may be late in April or.
Well, when do you want to, you said you want to get that to the council by June?
Probably, let me think about the dates, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, for sure, though, you're right, I mean, we need to have a work session sooner rather than later, for sure.
Right, okay. Very well, public hearings, I take there are none?
No.
No public hearings. Subcommittee reports,
For the parks,
yes,
for parks. I just heard from Cody today, we've got the last milestone that we needed to meet to start the work. That actually does the new trail that goes all the way to the Nisqually River has been completed. That cultural surveys have been done. So that means that they're gonna start to pull rails up and start to develop the trail from the endpoint that's just before the Centralia Power Canal all the way to the bridge, not across, but to the bridge. And so look for that to start happening.
What is the length of that?
1.5 miles, I think, 1.6, 1.9, maybe.
You're exactly right. 1.69.
1.6 miles. I've been working on it for. Can't remember. But yes, it's quite a nice extension to the trail that already exists, Prairie Line Trail on the other side of 507. That goes out toward the Centralia Power Canal, but now will go all along the rest of, well, the pines, the Squally Pines will be on one side, and there's horse boarding and I think there's actually going to be a horse trail as well. Horses that are out there.
Nice.
So it's going to be a nice addition. And my house. There's various things that are out there.
So you can walk to the meetings.
Walk to the meetings.
Used to ride my bike, but back surgery, I don't do that outside anymore. So it's a really, really great addition. So that's happening. There's work underway for redoing the stage in City Park. And so they're looking at plans, we're looking at a contractor.
We got a contractor.
We got a contractor now. And so there's a couple of different things that will be happening if all the work can be done on the stage before we start having events in the summertime as they start. Then we'll complete the stage before the events happen. If they can't be completed before that, we'll wait to do the stage after summer, because we can't do construction during the middle of all those events. We have a number of events and we'd have to have Carolyn here to tell us all the events. It's really keeping track of a lot of events and a lot of things going on just about every week. But the big ones will start up with the summertime. And so we'll have a very nice stage to support the events in the park. Oh, you could go into all the other things. Cochrane is being redesigned, water filtration system that was originally put there is being redone. And so that one's doing, there's all kinds of environmental reviews, but then there'll be some the ponds that are there will be redone. And We're gonna put lighting in there, aren't we, in Cochrane?
Water fountains with lights.
That'll be nice.
There'll be lighting down the main strip of 507 in middle of town. And those are all, we call it green lighting. It's solar array, lighting. So they're not connected to any electric grid. They just receive their power from solar. And we have assurance from other places like this with minimal solar that there's no problem getting enough light. And so that'll also be in Cochrane. So there'll be more light for people to walk sidewalks and to walk parks fairly soon.
The lights came in last week, Tuesday last week. So they'll be up soon.
And those are the major ones, the major things that are going on. Dog park is very soon. Dog park is construction will start on that. So it'll be this summer sometime.
Where is that dog park?
Dog park is off of the water tower and down there. Go down that way and to your right as you're going away from town.
How big is that park?
4.13 acres.
I wasn't gonna remember that one. I'm gonna say 5. Yeah. And there'll be a section for small dogs, a section for large dogs, parking area, lighting, as well as covered space. Washing stations for the dogs, things like that.
Great.
It's very nice. Other questions? We've got a lot going on in parks.
Sure sounds like it.
And I like to commend, we now have someone, Line, who is with the chamber, but is now with the city, is keeping all of the events and all of the activities that are going on with City Park and with the other parks, keeping them organized and having even more activities come on. So there's a lot happening that's bringing people in Yelm together in City Park, and people are saying, wow, we want this.
Yeah.
That's all.
Great commission.
We have anything? Yes, Chris Vaccaro. We're getting together tomorrow, the tree commission. We are judging the Arbor Day art contest entries. Those came from schools in the area, students K through 12. We even included Lacamas Elementary. So the Arbor Day celebration will be the last Friday in April. I want to say April 29th. You're all welcome to attend. We have 2 choirs, from the local schools performing, an ROTC doing the presentation of colors. Lots of tree facts, saplings will be giving out, so it'll be a lot of fun. It's a lot of preparing for a 1-hour fireworks show.
Did you say April 29th?
The last Friday in April, maybe is that the 28th?
28th. The 29th, so home show.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right. Anything else? It's not. All right, then I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
And second,
Second, here a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I hear none. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.